All right, I'm back. And also, while I was out, I looked and said, wow, I should color code these. That might help. Okay, so let's get oriented here. Here is the arcuate nucleus. And up here is the lateral hypothalamus. Now, when the lateral hypothalamus, when cells here fire action potentials, what that's going to do is lead to an increase in feeding, primarily through this pathway, but there are other pathways as well. So the point is, when you stimulate the lateral hypothalamus, you're going to get feeding. The arcuate nucleus, though, contains two types of neurons that are able to sense the hormonal state of the organism as it relates to energy balance. So we already mentioned ghrelin. So ghrelin is released from the stomach when you're fasting. That is when you haven't eaten for a while. So I had a very light lunch today, and I'm sitting in my office. It's a little after 3, and I'm starting to get hungry. I can feel my stomach starting to growl, and I'm sure there's some ghrelin that's just sort of pumping out and is heading up to my arcuate nucleus. So when that happens, you notice there's a plus sign here. So that hormone comes up, and it's going to activate these cells. These are neuropeptide Y cells, or neuropeptide Y neurons, and they will increase, or they'll fire action potentials. Where's my cursor? They'll fire action potentials, which will activate these neurons, which will result in feeding. Now notice there's a little loop coming off here, a little side axon, and that is an inhibitory input on this other group of neurons. These are called POMC neurons, which I'll spell out in the next slide. And these tend to decrease appetite. So while these are firing because I'm hungry, and they're sending an excitatory input up here, they are sending an inhibitory input over to the POMC neuron. Now don't think too hard about how that's all happening, because they are skipping out a few neurons in here that result in that. But now let's go over here to our POMC neurons. Like I just said, those will reduce appetite when they fire action potentials, and they're going to get excitatory input coming up from leptin. Leptin, if you remember from the last time, they are released from adipose tissue. And so as glucose is being stored, because you've eaten more than you need, so it's getting stored, and that's going to send an excitatory signal to these neurons, and what that's going to do is inhibit these cells from firing. Leptin will also send an inhibitory signal to neuropeptide Y neurons, as will insulin, which is receiving information which is being released from the pancreas. Peptide YY 3 to 36, which is sending a hormone being released from the intestines. All three of these inhibit the neuropeptide Y neuron. When they're inhibited, you don't get that inhibition anymore, and you're not going to activate it, and there you go. It's going to shut it down. Okay? So those are the main hormones involved. Here's another way of looking at it. So again, neuropeptide Y has cell bodies in the arcuate nucleus, and actually if you put neuropeptide Y down in here, you literally get what is described as ravenous eating. They will just eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. It's just like, if you get a chance, I'm going to probably post this as a YouTube video for you as well. But if you get a chance, have a look at this. I have to check and make sure it still works. But this is where they're stimulating these neurons optogenetically, and you can see this ravenous eating. Okay, agouti-related peptide, that's also part of this neuropeptide Y neurons. It works along with it. It also increases appetite, but at the same time decreases energy expenditure. So not only does it get you to eat, but it also works on your energy expenditure to decrease the amount of energy that you're using. And then finally, pro-opiomelanocortin, that's the POMC, that inhibits appetite. Okay, so that's the overview of the hypothalamus And this is, like I said earlier, this is primarily a homeostatic model. And what we're going to talk about next is more of a, I guess you could think of it as more of the realistic model of what controls our eating.